your experiences at a certain point almost predetermine your views on certain things. When we're talking about Thatcher. That's why I feel so strongly about some of the things that are happening now, because having lived through the early 90s Russia, the fact that things can change dramatically and very quickly is a given to me. Whereas I think if you've not had that experience on a visceral level, you sort of think that no matter what changes, things will remain the same.
Yes.
And I know for a fact that that is not true.
That's really interesting. Douglas talks about that, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. Douglas and I get on very well, precisely for this
But that's why people always say,
Douglas Murray.
Yeah.
And why does he know that? How does he know that?
Well, he's talking about the culture war.
In his Strange Death of Europe book, he said he spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe trying to understand why they had resisted, let's like call a spade, Islamification, Islamic immigration, to the extent that they had, and also were much more sceptical about the EU, although they were desperate to experience the economic benefits of it, of course. You know. And he said it's because they still have a sense of the tragedy of life, the potential for things to go terribly wrong quite quickly.
And that's how I feel very strongly. And look at the other person who's even bigger than Douglas, who's made waves in the cultural landscape in the last few years, Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, most people don't know this, but one of the central planks of his worldview, I think, is formed by his study of Solzhenitsyn and the Soviet experience. Right. So this idea that societies can change very quickly, that they can become tyrannical very quickly, that human beings are capable of great, terrible things.
I believe that's
with very little motivation.
But isn't that why so people are complacent? And they always say to me, "Oh, the culture war doesn't matter."
Yeah,
because ultimately it's just a few idiots.
One of the things we forget about Solzhenitsyn, or certainly the Bolshevik Revolution, was that it was not the introduction of a new degree of tyranny to Russia. It was, in fact, the replacement of
one form of tyranny
with another. Yeah,
sure.
They did not have the same experience under the Tsar that we used to have under Edward VII. You know, they might have been part of the same family, but actually they already lived. You know, Theodore Dalrymple. I don't know his real name, but he writes. He wrote about a book of letters. I can't remember, Christine, I think his name was. He was a contemporary and friend of de Tocqueville, who did the same for America. Where Christine spent some time in Russia and wrote a sort of diary about it. And he said it's extraordinary the amount of dishonesty and simple lies that people will pay lip service to because it is demanded of them by the state.
Yeah.
If the Tsar, you know, is lame or because he's fallen off his horse, and nobody's allowed to talk about it. You know, I can't remember what the details, but you know what the same sort of thing that you then recognise in 1984, the same kind of thing that you think characterises the sort of things that land you in the gulag. Just speaking the truth, live not by lies, right? That's Solzhenitsyn's big thing, because this is how you get there. You have to be constantly defending it. But it was the same mid-19th century. It's already part of the Russian mindset.
But people would say now that we've reached a point where it is catastrophizing to talk about gulags or to talk about you know, prescriptions against free speech or all the rest of it. But there's that creeping element in our society. There's something that could turn, I think, potentially.
What's that? An American quote, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. So, I should have chewed before I started saying, but I feel that those of us who have seen it change quickly, or who've...
Well, how quickly did it change from your perspective in Russia?
Well, in the 90s, overnight. It was literally
wasn't it? Yeah.
So today you were a priest, let's say, or whatever. Let's say you were a prominent scientist, and tomorrow you were selling your belongings on the street. And I'm not. When I say today and tomorrow, I'm not exaggerating.
We've had nothing like that.
It wouldn't be the same day and tomorrow for everyone, but in any individual life it could happen that quickly.
The trajectory of your life was irrevocably changed overnight by events that were completely and utterly out of your control.
And it's interesting, I haven't read a lot of it, but when I look at Russian literature, it seems to reflect that fact a lot more than British literature does. And not just like Soviet-era literature, also the 19th century stuff.
Of course.
But also, I suppose, like Dr. Zhivago's, you know, the big romantic things, but also the kind of smaller, more... There's that amazingly dark humour that you get in things like Gogol or whatever, that you know, have that sense of the absurdity of fate, the caprice of it.
And this is where, I guess, one of the things that might... I mean, I haven't met either of you two before, we've met before, but one of the things that I suppose I'm beginning to understand why it brought us together is a sense that this idea that we're on some escalator of progress, constantly sort of like, everything is always, that terrible 1997 Labour Party things will always get better.
That's Dareem.
Dareem.
Brian
yes.
Cox.
Let's not
Brian,
start slagging Dareem off.
No.
That's one of my limits, my red lines.
Okay, well,
My family are from Derry, so it's a big deal.
Okay, by the way, it's bollocks. I mean, like,
Yeah, I know,
with
yeah,
knobs
yeah,
on. And it's dangerous bollocks, because if we start thinking like that, and that's part of this whole idea of progress, then what you're telling us, which I sort of understand, the idea that suddenly, that all sorts of things that we prize and the way we are human with each other and we are civilised, whatever that means, can suddenly just disappear overnight. And we have to understand the terror of that, and this sort of like idea that we're always just constantly, slowly getting better.
But this is what
and
I
we're
think
always
is-
better than the years before us.
Yeah.
It really upsets me.
Of course, and it is absolutely why that is a reason why people do get more right wing as they get older, or what appears to be more right wing, as you would say, more they cherish tradition and say, hang on, things can be worse than this. They could be improved, but they could also be worse. So be careful. But the trick, arguably the trick in life, and the political trick, is to identify which aspects of change to be alarmed about, and,
Yes,
and
but that's very difficult without hindsight,
this is
though.
good. isn't it?
I just
Yeah,
look back at my
it is.
experience. You know, I said earlier I voted for Thatcher because I wanted to,
Shake things up.
Accelerate it.
I
Yeah.
wanted to buy Kalashnikovs and Glasgow Dockers, and I'm sitting here next to someone who knows what that really means.
Yeah. It's very romantic as a young person
I'm
to say
a
that.
public schoolboy.
Yeah.
Okay, playing at this game. And there's so many people doing exactly the same thing. And I suddenly look back on who I was, and I'm sort of disgusted in a way with my lack of moral seriousness about the way in which I was playing at this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I was a posh boy, pretending that all this sort of stuff about revolution was exciting and sexy and so forth.
That's because you're distant from it and you're not actually part of a revolution.
I had no idea what I was talking about. I had no idea what the consequence of it was. I had no idea of my own privilege.